This is Campaign 2006, brought to you by the News Herald and Lakeland Community College. Today we're talking with the two candidates for Secretary of State, Greg Hartman, who is the Republican candidate, and Jennifer Brunner, who is the Democratic candidate. And there will be a new Secretary of State beginning in 2007 because the current holder of that office, Ken Blackwell, is running for governor this year. I'm Jim Collins. I'm editor emeritus and executive and resident at Lakeland Community College. With me on the firing line is Dave Jones, who's been writing politics for the News Herald for the past 40 years, and we'll let Dave start with the first topic of conversation.
The Secretary of State is the Chief Elections Officer in the state of Ohio. Could each of you describe your background and qualifications to run to serve in that office, starting with Jennifer?
Thank you, Dave. I'm Jennifer Brunner, and I'm running for Secretary of State after almost 5 years as a Common Pleas Court judge on the Franklin County Court of Common Pleas. Before that, I practiced election law for 13 years, and in my practice, I represented candidates, citizen groups, developers, anyone who had an interest in something that related to elections, as well as organizations that were involved in political activity who had campaign finance issues. So the work involved litigation as well as advising. And prior to that, I also served on the Franklin County Board of Elections, and I served as a deputy director in the Secretary of State's office, where I represented the Secretary of State in the Ohio legislature on any type of election or office legislation, as well as controlling board, which deals with state contracts, and the budget for the Secretary of State's office.
Greg?
I'm Greg Hartman. I'm a candidate for Secretary of State of Ohio. I'm currently Clerk of Courts in Hamilton County, where I manage about 320 people. I came to government with a bit of a different perspective. I ran a small business for 3 years, so made a payroll, had employees, and know what it meant to have the importance of having government stay out of the way of business and encourage business development. That background has enabled me to, I think, be innovative as Clerk of Courts. When you do business with the court system in Hamilton County, you do it over the internet. That's made it able for me to do it with less people. We've been able to save taxpayers about $1.3 million in the last 3 years, of which I'm very proud. And on the elections side of it, as executive director of the party, I represented many different candidates as we dealt with the Board of Elections, and have been very involved in politics and elections and dealing with local boards of elections. I've spent the last year traveling Ohio, talking to the various boards of elections across the state to put together a plan how I think that to best run a statewide election. I think from my perspective, having run a large organization gives me experience that provides me an advantage in being Secretary of State. A statewide election has got a lot of moving parts, and I've managed an office with a lot of moving parts and done it successfully.
We'll start with you, Greg, this time, and then Jennifer. You sort of led into what I was going to ask about. What is your assessment of how elections are handled in Ohio, say compared with other states, as far as you are aware of that?
I think that our system is one of the best in the country. We manage elections on a county-by-county basis through bipartisan boards of elections. I think Florida could have learned a lot about the way we do it in Ohio. I think there is work to be done, though. I think that we need to really reach out to the counties, and the Secretary of State needs to provide them the support that's necessary. We've got a good system of elections. It can be better. As Secretary of State, we're going to make sure fraud doesn't get into our system. We're going to make sure the Secretary of State provides the backup that boards of elections around the state need.
Jennifer, what's your assessment of how our elections are being conducted in Ohio?
My assessment isn't quite as rosy as what Greg's is. While I have spent many years working with everyday election officials around the state, and I know them to be a very dedicated group of people, and oftentimes you see people, once they start working in elections, they get the bug and they love working with elections because they understand it's about making the system accessible to people and allowing people to do the most basic function of democracy, which is to vote. But the problem we've had in Ohio has been a lack of uniform policy coming from the Secretary of State's office. And so what's happened on things like voter identification for absentee voting is that the boards of elections have been told to come up with their own policy, and we have a patchwork of policies around the state and a real lack of uniformity. What we need is a Secretary of State who is committed, who is dedicated, who wants the job, who knows how to do the job, and who can do the job. And what we've had for the last 16 years are two Secretaries of State who took the position with a deal with the party so that they could sit back and wait 8 years to run for governor, and the people of our state and our election system has suffered because of it. I have a lot of ideas on poll worker training, poll worker recruitment, and in fact, today the Cuyahoga County Board of Commissioners released a report from the Election Science Institute that has very sobering consequences for how the Diebold machines have worked in Cuyahoga County in combination with the lack of preparedness by the Board of Elections, lack of instructions from the Secretary of State, and but in addition to the inability to tell whether the machines accurately record what the actual vote of the voters was. This report is online at the County Commissioner's website. It's about a 234-page report.
Okay, Dave?